Ashes of the Soul Forged, Chapter 3. The Weight of Whispers. As observed by me, vilest of the quiet accord, I watched the boy discover his expanding nature with the fascination of one who has seen many powers manifest, but few so dramatically. The shadow at his feet writhed like a living thing, responding to his distress and the sword's growing influence. He looked down in shock as darkness climbed his legs like eager vines. This was not part of Nethrix's original gift. This was evolution, adaptation, the soul weapon growing beyond its initial parameters. I had seen such things before, in the early days when gods experimented more freely with mortal enhancement. They rarely ended well. But then, most bearers surrendered to their weapons within days. Edrin had lasted longer, fought harder, maintained more of himself than any eye had observed. Perhaps that resistance had forced the weapon to develop new strategies, new capabilities. Or perhaps Nethrix had planned this all along. "Move with it," Mira said urgently, recognizing the manifestation for what it was. "Don't fight the shadow, use it." The soldiers were climbing the hill now. 5 men in Silvershore colours, with the casual confidence of those who had never met real resistance. Their sergeant called orders that spoke of capture rather than killing. They wanted to know who watched their sanctioned atrocity. They wanted to ensure no witnesses carried tales. Edrin's shadow reached toward the burning village like spilled ink. Where it touched other shadows, cast by buildings, trees, the smoke itself, connection sparked. He could feel the pathways, the spaces between light where something other than physics held sway. The girl, he managed through gritted teeth, can't let them. "Then don't," Mira said simply. "But remember, every path has a price. Make sure you're willing to pay it." He looked at the soldiers, at the burning village, at the girl who had managed to slip away from her attacker but had nowhere to run. 6 voices in his head offered 6 different solutions, all ending in blood. Sorrow's edge hummed its approval, eager for any choice that led to feeding. Instead, Edrin stepped into his own shadow and disappeared. The sensation defied description. Not movement, but translation. Not travel, but transition. One moment he stood on the hillside. The next he emerged from the shadow of a burning barn 20 yards from the confused soldier who'd lost his prey. The world looked different from within shadow. Colours bled into grayscale, sounds became muffled, distant. But life blazed like beacons in the dark. Every heartbeat a drum, every breath a flag marking viable targets. The soldier spun at Edrin's appearance, hand half drawing his blade before freezing. Something in Edrin's eyes, perhaps, or the way shadows clung to him like a second skin. Or simply the impossibility of a boy stepping from darkness itself. "Run," Edrin told the girl. His voice came out wrong. Not 6 voices speaking at once, but something worse. Something that belonged to the spaces between light. "Find your family. Find anyone. Just run." She didn't need telling twice. The soldier found his courage as his prey escaped. "Witchcraft," he spat, completing his draw. "Dragons bend sorcery. You'll burn for—" Edrin drew Sorrow's edge and the world stuttered. Time didn't stop. That would have been too simple, too clean. Instead it stretched like heated metal, each second pulling into impossible length. The soldier's sword rose with the speed of seasons changing. His eyes widened with the patience of understanding dawn, and Edrin could see everything. Every possible angle of attack, every weakness in the man's stance, every place where blade could meet flesh and separate soul from body. The knowledge came not from the screaming voices. They had gone silent, shocked by this new manifestation, but from the weapon itself. Sorrow's edge sang possibilities, each note a different death. "Beautiful," the blade whispered. "Do you see now what we could be together? This is just the beginning. Feed me, and I will show you wonders beyond mortal comprehension." The temptation was real. In this stretch moment, Edrin felt like a god. He could end the soldier before the man even realized death had arrived. Could dance through the other approaching soldiers like wind through wheat. Could paint the burning village in new shades of red and call it justice. Instead, he struck with the pommel. The blow took the soldier in the temple with precisely calculated force. Unconsciousness, not death. The man crumpled as time snapped back to normal speed, leaving Edrin gasping from the effort of restraint. But Sorrow's edge was furious. Waste, it shrieked. Weakness? He would have killed children for sport, and you show mercy? The other soldiers had seen their comrade fall. Shouts of alarm, steel clearing leather, the sergeant barking orders to surround the witch boy. And through it all, 6 voices erupting back into chaos. Should have killed him, tactical error leaving an enemy alive. Now we're outnumbered with no advantage. Take their weapons after. Good steel brings good coin. The fire's spreading. Use it as cover. Kill them all and let the gods sort truth. Enough! Edrin roared, the word tearing from his throat with such force that the approaching soldiers actually paused. Shadow boiled around him like smoke. Time shivered, threatening to stretch again. The sword in his hand pulsed with hungry light, its red gem casting everything in shades of blood and possibility. He stood at the centre of power that belonged in no mortal frame, and for one terrible moment, everyone present understood that death had taken the shape of a 15-year-old boy. "Sergeant," Edrin said, his voice carrying despite the roar of flames, "you're going to collect your men and leave. You're going to report that the village resisted. You're going to forget the girl, forget me, forget anything beyond your own survival. Because if you don't..." He let Shadow writhe up the blade, let time hiccup just enough for them to taste the wrongness. "If you don't, I'll show you what Silvershore's enemies are really capable of." The sergeant was a practical man. 20 years of service had taught him the difference between battles worth fighting and disasters worth avoiding. He looked at his unconscious soldier, at the boy wreathed in impossible shadow, at the blade that hurt to perceive directly. "Collect Hendricks," he ordered. "We're done here." "But Sergeant..." "We're done." They withdrew with the careful efficiency of professionals who knew when they were outmatched. Edrin maintained his stance until they were gone, shadow writhing, time trembling at the edges, the very picture of barely contained power. The moment they were out of sight, he collapsed. The cobblestones were blessedly cool against his face. Around him, the village burned with diminishing enthusiasm as structure surrendered to inevitability. The shadows retreated to their normal shapes. Time resumed its steady march. And in his head, 6 voices resumed their argument about everything he'd done wrong. "That was dramatic," Mira observed, appearing at his side with her usual unsettling silence. "Also foolish, costly, and probably shortened your life by a year or 2, but definitely dramatic." "The girl got away," Edrin managed. "She did, along with most of the villagers who took your appearance as a sign to flee rather than gawk. So, perhaps not entirely foolish." She helped him sit up, studying him with those 2 knowing eyes. You accessed powers the blade shouldn't have granted yet. That's concerning. Everything about this is concerning. He looked at sorrow's edge, still clutched in his trembling hand. It's torturing me, making the voices worse deliberately, trying to break me. Of course it is. Did you think a weapon forged by the god of murder would play fair? She produced water from somewhere. She always had what was needed, and helped him drink. The question is what you're going to do about it. What could he do? The sword was part of him now, bound by divine will and mortal blood. He couldn't abandon it, couldn't destroy it, could barely resist it. And with each passing day, each absorbed soul, each new power manifested, it grew stronger while he grew more fractured. There has to be a way, he said. Something to balance it. Something to... He stopped, tilted his head as if listening to distant music, through the chaos of 6 arguing voices, through the sword's angry hunger, through his own exhaustion. He felt... something. A pull. A call. A presence that felt like hammer song and patient shaping. East, he whispered. Something's calling me east. Mira's expression shifted minutely. The Accord has interest in that direction. I don't care about the Accord. You should. They're the ones who keep gods from treating the mortal world as their personal game board. The ones who enforce rules even deities must follow. She paused, choosing words carefully. If something calls you toward their power, it's either salvation or trap. Possibly both. Edrin stood, legs shaky but holding. Around them, the last villagers fled into the forest, carrying what they could save. The soldiers were gone, leaving only smoke and ash, and the bitter taste of necessity. Then I guess we'll find out which, he said. Because I can't keep going like this. The sword wants me broken or compliant. The voices want me mad. Everyone seems to want me to be something I'm not. He looked east, toward whatever pulled at his essence. Maybe it's time to find out what I want. And if what waits there is worse than what you carry? He almost laughed. Then at least it'll be different. They left the burning village as full dark claimed the sky. Behind them, smoke rose to obscure the stars. Ahead, the road stretched toward possibilities that might be salvation or damnation, but would at least be chosen rather than inflicted. In his head, 6 voices argued about the decision. In his hand, sorrow's edge plotted new torments. And somewhere to the east, something his father might have recognized as hope began its patient work of shaping. I withdrew from direct observation as they made camp that night, shifting my attention to obligations that had grown heavy with delay. The quiet accord does not appreciate tardiness in its servants, and I had stretched the boundaries of acceptable absence. The space between heartbeats opened at my will, or rather, at the accord's allowance. Reality folded in directions mortals could not perceive, creating a pocket of existence where time held no sovereignty. The council chamber materialized around me, circular, windowless, lit by the memory of stars that had died before the first mortal drew breath. 7 figures waited, each bearing the weight of divine assignment without the glory typically associated with such service. We were not gods. We were not angels. We were the necessary interface between powers that could not coexist without mediation. Vilis. The speaker's voice carried neither warmth nor censure, simply acknowledgement. Your observation of the Ilaria situation proceeds. It does. I took my position in the circle, feeling the weight of my brothers and sisters' attention. The boy survived the initial intervention. He has bound with the weapon as Nethrix intended. And the escalation? I marshalled my thoughts carefully. In this place, every word carried weight. Every silence spoke volumes. 6 souls absorbed as of my last direct observation. The weapon demonstrates capabilities beyond initial parameters, shadow manipulation, temporal distortion, evolution beyond design. Concerning this from Ashren, whose domain included monitoring divine weapons. Soul blades typically maintain stable characteristics. Evolution suggests either exceptional compatibility or deliberate design, I finished. Yes, I believe Netherix planned for adaptation. To what end? The question hung in crystalline air. I had suspicions. Patterns observed, connections made, but suspicion was not certainty, and the Accord dealt only in certainties. Unknown, I admitted, but the timing concerns me. This intervention coincides with increased conflict between Silvershore and Dragon's Bend. The mortal war escalates beyond natural progression. Wars often do, the speaker observed. Mortals require little divine encouragement to slaughter one another. Yet the patterns are suspicious. Shared dreams preceding violence, strategic locations targeted on both sides, incidents that require our attention, spreading our resources. I let the implication settle. If I were planning something that required distraction, you would start a war. Ashran's tone had sharpened. Draw eyes to the obvious while moving toward the obscured. Classic Varkal strategy. The well? Another voice, Keeper Thane, whose watch included that most sacred of responsibilities. Secure, the speaker said. But doubt coloured the word. The bindings hold. The guardians stand. Nothing could threaten it without our knowledge. Nothing we know of, I corrected gently. But then, we didn't know Netherix could forge soul weapons until he did it. Silence settled like snow. In it, the weight of possibility. The Varkal had been testing boundaries for millennia, but always within understood parameters. If they had found some new angle of attack? Double the watches on the well, the speaker decided. Increase monitoring of divine movement, and you, Valis, maintain your observation. If this boy is a weapon aimed at our heart, we need to know before he strikes. Understood. I hesitated, then pushed forward. I require dispensation for a tangential action. Every eye fixed on me. Requests for dispensation were rare, dangerous. They acknowledged intention to skirt the edges of our law. Explain? The boy needs balance, something to anchor his humanity against the weapon's corruption. I would... Careful now. So careful. I would arrange for the creation of a counterweight, using existing materials, through intermediaries, no direct intervention. You grow attached, not accusation, observation. I grow concerned. The weapon seeks to break him, broken. He becomes unpredictable, uncontrollable, far more dangerous than if he maintains some semblance of self. They considered. In that consideration, I felt the weight of centuries, the careful balance of action and inaction that kept creation from tearing itself apart. Granted, the speaker finally said, but carefully, subtly. If your actions make matters worse, they won't. See that they don't. Dismissed. I departed the council with permission granted, but unease growing. They sensed deception where I intended only selective truth. Yes, I was concerned about the boy's stability. Yes, a broken soul weapon bearer posed tremendous danger. But beneath those truths lay a simpler one. I had hope for him. And hope, in one such as I, was perhaps the most dangerous thing of all. But first, An old friend to visit. The transition from council chamber to mortal realm required adjustment. Time resumed its flow. Weight returned to existence. Colours dimmed from the crystalline perfection of pure thought to the muddy reality of physical matter. I manifested in a workshop that existed in the margins, too real for dream, too strange for ordinary craft. Calum worked at his forge as he had for 3,000 years, not because he needed to. His nature transcended such requirements, but because he chose to. Creation for creation's sake, art because beauty mattered, craft because the making was more important than the made. He didn't look up as I entered. Veilless, I wondered when you'd come begging. I don't beg. No, you manipulate circumstances until others offer what you want. He set down his hammer, not the one he was working on, but the one he worked with. The boy? You've heard. Divine weapon manifests. Bearer survives initial binding. Souls start piling up like cordwood. Yes, I've heard. Half the accord whispers about it. The other half shouts. Now he did look at me, eyes older than mountains. What do you want? I produced Bran's hammer from the space between spaces. It sat heavy in my hands, patient as stone, waiting to return to its purpose, reforge this. Calum's eyebrows rose. That's not a commission, that's a resurrection. The smith's essence lingers. His son needs anchor. This could provide it. Could, or could create something worse. Soul forging isn't recipe work, Veilless. You can't just mix memory and metal and expect happy results. But he took the hammer, running fingers along its surface with professional assessment. Good work, honest work, the kind that builds rather than breaks. Like the smith himself? And you want me to trap him in steel? Make him tool to his son's hand? I want you to give them both a choice. The sword takes, let the hammer give, balance the equation. Calum studied me with uncomfortable intensity. You're playing dangerous games. I'm trying to prevent catastrophe. Same thing, different words. He sighed, ancient and weary. I'll need time. Soul work can't be rushed. And materials. Whatever you need. Within reason. The accord granted dispensation, not blank warrant. But he was already moving, pulling materials from spaces that folded rather than opened. 3 months minimum, 6 more likely. And Veilless, no guarantees. Souls don't always want what we think they want. Brand might prefer peaceful rest to eternal service. He was a father first, smith second, given choice between rest and helping his son. You assume he'd choose servitude, dangerous assumption. But Calum was already working, hands moving with purpose that transcended physical motion. I'll send word when it's done, if it can be done. Now go. This kind of work doesn't appreciate witnesses. I left him to his impossible task, returning to the mortal realm proper. The boy and his companion had made camp in a grove of old oaks. I watched from angles that didn't quite exist as he fought sleep, fought dreams, fought the 6 voices that gave him no peace. Soon, I promised silently, hold on just a little longer. But even as I thought it, I wondered if I promised salvation or simply different damnation. The hammer would be powerful, yes. But power always came with price. And I would just have to hope the price would be one he could pay.
The story continues, as all stories must. Find the next chapter at Codex 11. Subscribe, lest the Forge's call go unheard.